Hello, welcome to Nixon's the One. This is a series on Nixon's political comeback in the 1960s to win the presidency in 1968. Today's episode deals on comments that Nixon made in 1965 while campaigning for the Republican gubernatorial candidate in New Jersey about a professor named Genovese on the Vietnam War at a teach-in at Rutgers University on April 23rd, 1965. I'm Merrick Masters, Professor of Business Emeritus, commentator, podcaster, and author. You can find me at my email address and YouTube channel. Today is September 25th, 2025. On September 23rd, 1965, as noted, there was a teach-in being held at Rutgers University. These teach-ins were largely protests against the Vietnam War, and at this teach-in, a professor of history at Rutgers University named Genovese, who was 35 years old at the time, and later ironically became a conservative who supported Pat Buchanan for President of the United States, made the following statement. "Those of you who know me," he said, "know I am a Marxist and a socialist. I do not fear or regret a pending Viet Cong victory in Vietnam. I welcome it." This statement was used by the Republican candidate Wayne Dumont for governor of New Jersey in 1965 in a campaign ad which appeared in October of 1965 to support his candidacy. He made the statement of Genovese a major campaign issue. This got Richard Nixon's attention, who, while campaigning for Dumont, vehemently denounced Genovese. In a statement while campaigning on October 24th, 1965 in New Jersey before the American Legion convention in that state, Nixon called on the Board of Governors of Rutgers University to dismiss Professor Eugene Genovese, the associate history professor who called for or welcomed a Viet Cong victory in Vietnam. Nixon rhetorically posed the question, does an individual employed by the state have the right to use his position to give aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States in wartime? The Legionnaires at that convention resoundingly said, no, no, no. Nixon elaborated to the New York Times in a letter to the editor, which appeared on October 25th, 1965, that I say as long as demonstrators and those participating in teach-ins are acting in an individual and private capacity, no action should be taken to curtail their activities. But any individual employed by the state should not be allowed to use his position for the purpose of giving aid and comfort to the enemies of the state. He then said, where the choice confronting us is between the lives of American men fighting to preserve the system which guarantees freedom of speech for all and the right of an individual to abuse that freedom, the lives of American fighting men must come first. Nixon was appealing to his base and appealing in particular to the conservative side of the Republican Party, which he needed in order to win the Republican nomination in 1968, which he was gearing up for. The New York Times editorialized and criticized Nixon pretty strongly for his comments, stating toward the end of its brief column that nothing of the sort in Wade's Mr. Nixon defending academic freedom in the abstract, but demanding the head of an obscure professor for exercising it offensively. Here is the old Nixon in action, posing the spurious choice between freedom of speech for Genovese and American boys defending freedom of speech in Vietnam. They started their article by stating that, as with the moth and the flame, Richard Nixon on the stump is drawn inexorably back to the dangerous and mostly irrelevant themes that helped him to early success in California, but probably cost him the presidency. Nixon was invited in 1966 to give the commencement address at the University of Rochester in New York, and also to receive an honorary degree. That invitation provoked a lot of consternation among the faculty and staff at the University of Rochester, who dissented. Nixon said that he does not accept as a matter of policy honorary degrees, and therefore declined the granting of one by Rutgers University, but he agreed in an agreement with the university's president to give the commencement address on June the 5th, 1966. In that, Nixon affirmed his commitment to academic freedom, to be against war, to be against this war in Vietnam, to be against the way this war is being conducted, and to be against the inequities of the draft. But Nixon, in the University of Rochester commencement address, said we should not root for the other side in the Vietnam War, going on to say, any teacher who uses the forum of a university to proclaim that he welcomes a victory for the enemy in a shooting war crosses the line between liberty and license. If we are to defend academic freedom from encroachment, we must also defend it from its own excesses. Nixon's controversial statement obviously did not serve him well among liberals and those who had an anti-war point of view, but that was not the base he was trying to appeal to. He was appealing to the conservative base of the Republican side, running as a centrist for the presidency. This is a little bit of information about me. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and stay tuned for more updates on Nixon's the One, his campaign to win the presidency in 1968. And I will be coming out with my book in the next few months on Nixon, how Richard Nixon rose from political ashes to win the presidency in 1968. Thank you, and have a good day.